Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to Lunch and Legislature. Ian, before we jump in anything, I just want to say a huge congratulations to you. We got results from the Seaver Reader Awards over the weekend. Your Red Cloud investigation, getting that award of merit. Amazing, amazing work. Just so
Thank
incredible.
You. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that.
And you have an
investigation
coming out
this week again. And I will say, stay tuned,
because
I do have an investigation that comes out tomorrow. So make sure you watch Local 4 Today. Coverage starts at 5 a.m., of course. If you're not up that early, we'll play it again at 6 a.m., and then, we'll have it on our website and all that. But this one, the people of Webster County will be thrilled that it's not anywhere near them.
Well, I am so happy that I think station-wide Nebraska stations
8,
we took home 8. I think 3 of those were first places, several awards of merit, but huge congratulations for you on that. So wanted to open with that and a happy Monday, and also an apology because we've been sort of fibbing to all of you for weeks now, saying Sine Die was going to be April 10th. Well, Speaker Arch said, "Hey guys, we spent a lot of time goofing around and not doing what we were supposed to be doing in a timely fashion." So now we are coming back for Day 60, which is this Friday, April 17th. The legislature is off until then. They left Friday afternoon. They won't be back until this coming Friday. And that is their last day. It was kind of funny because I think it was last Wednesday. He opened the day and he was like, "Hey, if you don't want to be back, we should probably get things done." And then last Wednesday very quickly devolved into a lot of chaos.
I was watching. I know you were there. We are definitely going to cover this. And I just want to say, after the week you had, Darsha, I am sorry that you did not get a party on Friday night because you deserve one.
It is okay. We did still hang out. It's hard to get multiple people at all these schedules. There's about a dozen of us in the Capitol Press Corps from all different outlets, and when you're coordinating 12 schedules, that's a little bit hard to do. So we went ahead and held our Sine Die party. We actually did it at the same time that they were splashing down the Artemis II. So we were
there you go.
We were doing a little Artemis II watching and kind of looking forward to the end of the session, but I guess we will see how this Friday goes. Last week, certainly chaotic. Yeah. Wednesday, arguably
that's a very
chaotic.
Good word for it, is chaotic.
Yeah, and I mean, I do feel like we get to that point kind of every session. The last couple of weeks get messy, they get late, there's a lot happening, you're scrambling to get things done. But Wednesday was kind of uniquely special, and I know you were following along and kind of helping me out on the digital end and helping provide context to other people that
if our texts were public,
well.
people would be entertained. It was like, I'm here for emotional support and digital support. Emotional support throughout the day, but digital support ends at noon when I go home.
That's right. That is right. And the emotional support, listen.
I was here for you. I was here for you.
Wednesday was, it's one of those where I don't like working split days, but that was one where we went. I think I finally left the Capitol at 10:30 at night, and you had to not be working at certain points in there because you just simply are not gonna put in 8 hours of overtime, budget-wise. Exactly. So it was a matter of kind of checking in, checking out. The reason we went so late is Wednesday morning kind of opened with a little chaos, I will call it, from Omaha Senator Kathleen Kauff.
I should note. I'm noting that I'm laughing at the chaos of it and not the content of these bills. And any joke we make is about the chaos, not the content. We're not taking a side. We don't do that here on Legislature.
We
so
sure don't.
Just wanted to put that out there because I will be laughing a lot during this.
It is just one of those things where we're kind of in amazement, and if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry. That's kind of how It's just I thought we were further along in the session. And we got a little bit of a curveball action. As journalists, I think we take all of that in stride, and sometimes a little giggle is how we have to deal with that. Exactly. The content of these bills, the amendments that came out, and the results of that, absolutely not funny at all. And we have some sound from some advocates who will better be able to explain that. We'll play that later. But Wednesday morning, Omaha Senator Kathleen Kauff filed 2 amendments on 2 separate bills that brought back aspects of 2 of her transgender-related bills that did not make it on the schedule this session. I believe it's 730 and 732 that made it out of committee. Right. They made it to general file. They did not get scheduled for any floor time. So she attached those 2 amendments. The first bill she attached it to was Denishi Gareka's LB 878, which was paid maternity leave for state employees. She actually attached her bathroom bill portion to that. And I had interviewed Senator Kauth earlier in the day, and I have some actual words so that I'm not paraphrasing.
Yeah.
She said, I did amend his original bill because Senator Gareka didn't specify maternity as being for women. So they made that adjustment, and it opened up the statute to put LB 730, which was the bathroom portion of the bill, on there. Ultimately, she lost that fight. It's called germaneness. Germaneness, it has to be topical. You can't have 50,000 things from random bills attached in. There has to be some thread of topicality. And ultimately, they said, this is not going to fly. But that took quite a while to get there.
Of Nebraska, by the way. Not every state has that where the bill has to be related. And so our Supreme Court has gone through and struck entire laws because the bills were not related. So it's kind of interesting, just factual history there.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see how that played out. If you remember, this bill would have required schools and state agencies to designate bathrooms based on sex at birth. There were hours-long hearings earlier this year. Last year, this bill got brought up, and the hearings, I think, were almost twice as long last year. Back before the session started, Senator Kauth, when she told me she was bringing it back, said, I'm going to keep bringing this until we pass it. Ultimately, the bathroom portion got pulled off of Gareka's bill. That bill went ahead. Was not the only amendment that she brought, and I know you have been covering kind of the medical cannabis saga for much longer than I have. So 933, just kind of a tragic end for advocates.
Yeah, it was proposed by Senator John Kavanaugh of Omaha. It's really hard to explain because you have to go in depth and you have to go through the history. But basically, that bill would have shielded doctors who prescribe medical cannabis from being punished. And I don't remember exactly what her amendment was, but it was something to do with shielding doctors and opening them up. Was it opening them up to prosecution?
It was preventing medical professionals from prescribing things like puberty blockers for the purposes of gender-affirming care. Not, of course, just to minors, but when you start looking at germaneness, Senator Kavanaugh brought up the germaneness argument with this one. He ultimately lost that ruling went in Senator Kauth's favor. So they did.
So we go another year with pretty much no laws, no enforceable way for Nebraskans to get medical marijuana for the most part.
And it was interesting that, the debate, we knew this was happening in the morning, and we kind of waited, and were they going to get to it? And they had so many bills on the agenda, and a lot of those were 4-hour debates because of where we're at in the session. So we knew it was going to be late before we got to it. We were taking time, trying to make sure that we all were going to be there at the right time, and it was late. I think it was almost 9 o'clock before this argument even came up. And I remember North Platte Senator Mike Jacobson had said on the floor, well, if we have legal medical cannabis and we have this medical cannabis commission and doctors could prescribe it, is it really something that we have to legislate, to say that they could do this? And advocates have said, doctors are afraid to do this, which is why they had asked Senator Kavanaugh to bring this bill and had fought so valiantly for it, is that, even when we talked to Nebraskans for medical marijuana, they said, we don't have a doctor that is willing to go on the record and talk about this because they're afraid. And Senator Jacobson was not in the minority when the debate came up of, do we really have to legislate this? And ultimately,
I'm
it led
not taking
Kavanaugh
a
to
side.
the bill.
Right. I'm not taking a side when I say that, but I think that it's interesting because when you look at the people that we have elected in office, Jim Pellin, Pete Ricketts, A.G. Hilgers, those people are all against medical cannabis from my understanding. And I don't think that they would hesitate to bring a lawsuit forward to test it against a doctor. And I think the concern of the advocates is not just that they'll bring it, it's just that no doctor wants to be the one to play chicken, if you will.
Correct. And I know I was talking to advocates in the rotunda, and one of them had mentioned that the governor had been on Catholic radio in Omaha talking about how there's never going to be legal marijuana in the state as long as he's governor. We know that they are opposed to this. We know that there have been multiple lawsuits. We're still waiting on a Supreme Court ruling.
We are.
For this. We have to wait and see, ultimately.
Yeah.
And one thing, I will go a little tangential here, but we talk a lot this session, especially about the will of the people. We did an entire 8-part series on the will of the people when it comes to medical cannabis. And Jim Pillen and Education Secretary Linda McMahon were in Waverly, just outside of Lincoln, last week. And one of the things that they talked about was some education bills that didn't advance. And I thought it was interesting that Governor Pillen had made the comment that we should actually change legislative rules because needing to reach 33 to break a filibuster is just absurd. And, when we can't get everybody to agree, we can't get anything done. And I think it's interesting because if you did that, ultimately there would be other consequences for bills like this. You might be able to reach that number easier. So it's one of those, like Senator Robert Dover of Norfolk had said a couple weeks ago, is very hypocritical depending on which side you're on and the things that you want. So it was interesting, but ultimately,
and we see that in the federal government too, by the way. I want to point that out, is that this is not a unique Nebraska thing. We had Democrats, when Biden was president, saying, we need to get rid of the filibuster. And now that Donald Trump is president, he's saying, we need to get rid of the filibuster. And Democrats are kind of hesitant. But basically, I think that whenever this happens, it's going to impact both sides equally.
Absolutely.
And I think that both sides, I don't want to say both sides will regret it, but both sides will reap what they've sowed.
And that's, when the Respect Nebraska Voters ballot petition came out earlier in this year and they started working on that, one of the things that Lincoln Senator Daniel Conrad said was, okay, we're getting into really, really touchy subjects here because once you start fundamentally changing rules, there are unintended consequences that you can't see down the road. That goes for both sides. So it will be interesting to watch. The bill that Pillen was talking about, not medical cannabis related, but
the education
will
bill.
Be interesting to see if there are proposed changes in the future. Ultimately, Senator Kavanaugh not giving up on this. I mean, we talked to him about it. I said, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Does this in any way change your resolve? And he gave kind of one of those of course not. And him, of course, a candidate for District 2. So interesting to see how that plays out. But ultimately, he ended up pulling this bill because this debate was going to continue. It was getting late. I think it was around 10 when he pulled this bill back. And
I can only imagine the amount of
upset.
exhaustion he had when he pulled that bill. Just because I know he'd been working very hard on it. I know that advocates have been working very hard on it. And just when you saw him pull it, it was just no matter where you stand, you went, that guy's going through it.
Yeah, it was late. It had been a long day. And once we figured out that these amendments were coming on and the word kind of got out about that and the day became later, people started getting off of work, you actually started seeing advocates, members of the LGBTQ, the trans community showing up, members of the Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana and their advocates showing up. So the rotunda and the balcony ended up having a lot more people later in the day that were here. And I mean, of course it was late, and I don't want to sound like I am complaining that I had to be at work late. Not at all. But when you are not a salaried person, you're trying to balance those hours. But ultimately, this was something that was so important. We were kind of in and out, and people in the rotunda had stopped and said, we didn't think any media was going to be here at all for this. And you had the Journal Star and the Examiner, and so many of us stayed because we knew this was going to be a big deal. So props to Capital Media. Of course, we're happy to be there. Yeah. We miss things, and that is simply how it is, especially when you have one person covering it.
Exactly.
But people were ultimately very thankful, and I appreciate that. But while in the rotunda, we also talked to Chris Agger, who is the executive director for Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana. She had quite a lot to say. She's not the only advocate that we talked to, but we're going to play some sound for Krista now, and then we will chat and see you on the other side.
The real tragedy and what lawmakers tonight clearly do not understand or are completely ignoring is that there is a human cost to waiting another year, to not passing a bill that does this. And the human cost is lives and continuing suffering. And there will be people and there will be advocates. And God willing, the children are still here that we have been fighting for when we come back next year to do this same thing.
You know, we're coming back again. You know, they are not giving up the fight. Senator John Kavanaugh is not giving up the fight. I'm certain that there is a plan in place for him should he, you know, be elected to CD2 that this would come back. This is would have been the second kind of cannabis-related bill this session. The first one, I believe that was 1235, the first ever cannabis-related legislation to pass out of the Nebraska legislature. That came out 35-13. Excuse me, that came out 46-2. I can read, I promise. 46-2 came out of General Affairs Committee, and it basically gives the voter-created regulatory commission ability to actually set fees, raise money, be able to have the money that they then need to function. That was the first piece, you know, and when we covered that bill, it was, okay, this is the first piece, now we get this doctor protection with 933, and ultimately we did not get that. Not this year.
I think it's also important to note, for those who don't know Krista Eggers, I've never met her personally, but I've interviewed her. She's not doing this for herself, she's doing it for her child.
Correct.
And so when you see the emotion she has, you know, I just think that's a mama bear who is dedicated to what she's doing. Whether you agree with her or not, you can respect the dedication she has, that she's not doing it for her, she's not doing it for selfish reasons, she's doing it because she wants her child to have, in her eyes, a better life.
Yeah, it is. There are so many advocates that we've gotten the chance to talk to, whether through the 8-part series, Will of the People, that was done by our Jake Lawson. That's linked on our website. Highly encourage you to watch that.
Jake did a fantastic job with that. Yeah.
But yeah, if you need a catch up, because it's been a while that we've been talking about this, you know, this will be something that will come back next year in some form. Ultimately, for the Calf's amendment on this bill and all of this, you know, when this first came out, we talked to Senator Merv Reapy of Ralston, who was the no vote
potty police
last year. Yeah, the potty police sound, if you remember that. Was one of the most comical sound bites I think I've ever heard, but he stood firm on this last year. They pulled out the Protect Women and Girls in Sports. I believe that was LB 89. They pulled that out and got that passed. That was signed by Governor Pillen. But when we talked to Merv Reapy about it, he was like, I absolutely will not do this. I have said before I wouldn't do this. And his exact words were, this is a frivolous piece, burning up time. Quite frankly, the citizens of Nebraska deserve better than to have us just wasting time on an issue that's resolved. So there's that kind of will of the people fight again. We've talked a lot about that. I think when Zach Wendling from the Examiner was here, we talked about Senator Tony Sorrentino saying that it was kind of the ballot process, kind of an opinion poll. So interesting to see that all play out, all of this ultimately leading with Kavanaugh pulling 933. And we have one day left.
We do. Friday. And that one day, I know who's going to be there on that one day. And I wish that person a lot of luck, because I know she's going to need it.
Thank you. Thank you kindly. It's nice that we have 4 days off. I assume, I haven't talked to anybody about it, but I assume if you're like a Mike Jacobson of North Platte, the thought that you have to drive back and then come back again on Friday is probably not great. I imagine that's a little bit of a drive.
I have spoken with
far
Jacobson
western
before.
senators.
I'm sure he has some strong opinions about driving back for one day. I'll put it that way.
I'm sure there's kind of a desire to not do that. I think Speaker Arch was really hoping that people would hear his impassioned speech and go, all right, let's get through it. And ultimately, it was kind of wild to watch it not happen. It sort of devolved very quickly, and everybody was like, I guess
it was definitely a nail biter.
Doing it,
if you can use that term here.
Yeah. So ultimately, I mean, to recap, the maternity leave bill, the amendment was not germane. That bill went ahead and advanced. And then debate started on this bill for 933, and before we really got anywhere, Senator Kavanaugh pulled it. So 1 day left. We will see what comes out of the last day, and of course, we'll have another episode breaking down all the big bills that finally passed and were either signed or just approved because they were on the governor's desk for more than 5 days.
And I think it will be safe to say by that point that we will not be having another emergency or not having another session another day. Because, we teased this last week. We're extending it, but we're not going to do that again, I don't think.
I don't think we're at the point where there would be a discussion of a special session. That discussion was had. We know that these are not things that have been not talked about. Wow, yeah. I double negatived in there. We know that these are things that have been talked about, that have floated around, but ultimately
exactly
getting the budget passed, which of course Senator Rob Clements of Elmwood, this his 10th and final year chair of appropriations, was very happy about. The governor had no vetoes. That came out last week, and so ultimately those budget proposals passed. And while we're talking about Rob Clements of Elmwood, the Examiner Aaron Bamer had a great feature on Rob Clements, a really good look at the work that he's done over the past few years. That came out this morning. Absolutely worth the read. And again, thanks to our friends at the Examiner for all the work that they do as well.
Absolutely.
Perfect. That's all I have. It's going to be, knock on wood, relatively calm Friday, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
We will see, and of course, we will bring you the latest as it happens on Friday, and we will be back here on Monday to talk about what on earth comes out of this final day, this sine die. So
absolutely.
We will see you then.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.